to understand the Middle East crisis. Has it come? No crisis is good, but is it a very bad time for the crisis to happen, or it could have happened another time? The reason is that a lot of countries are they have elections coming up in the US, Russia, Egypt, and even in Poland. So a lot of countries which are part of this whole dealing. China is dealing with its own economic problems. So will they be looking at it purely from uh, taking care of their domestic problems, domestic issues, trying to address the audience back home, and rather not looking at things on the ground from trying to solve the problem? I want to understand, will politics override all the concerns, humanitarian concerns and everything, or is it that it will still be a good politics that we will be seeing?
Well, I don't believe in coincidences. Don't believe that these things are planned just randomly or without a reason. I do think that all these elections and all these things are taken into consideration. I think it's also beneficial to Russia because it distracts from the war in Ukraine, and it splits interest and support for the war in Ukraine, especially among Republicans who were already skeptical of providing further funding for weapons to begin with. Now there's an effort to connect Ukraine aid bill to Israel, which is facing opposition.
Right.
Some of the Republicans want separate bills. The Democrats obviously opposed. So there's no telling what's going to happen with that, especially without a speaker. We've got a fourth nominee from the GOP in 3 weeks who is very unlikely to get the majority needed to become the speakers. There's no telling what will happen after that. And he's pretty anti-Ukraine, Mike Johnson. Um, so yeah, in Poland, we have seen a very fragile coalition emerge as a result of the Tusk's party coming to power. They are known to have being very on very good terms with the European Union, which on the surface would position European Union to further strengthen its alliance against Russia. But in reality, that party is actually has significant Russian connections. It has been smearing the previous ruling Law and Justice party and coming up with all sorts of uh, active, very active positions against it, and there's evidence of Russian active measures being involved in all of that. So Poland is becoming, an unstable political situation in Poland. Even if Tusk's party does not prevail on most of its initiatives, it benefits Russia. And this kind of situation also creates a great deal of uncertainty on a policy level regarding Ukraine. Poland has been one of the chief contributors to Ukraine, even though its capacity is currently limited by its own security needs. It still has shown a lot of a great deal of support. What happens if it transitions to something else, or if it doesn't? If the coalition is too weak to actually um, be of any significant leadership on this issue? What happens if Russia starts pushing more aggressively against Polish borders with refugees and various destabilizing activities, and there's a lot of infighting in the government? There's no telling. Egypt is also at a precarious point as a result of the Gaza situation. They're being, there's a lot of pressure to provide aid. They cannot take any refugees from Gaza, but there is a lot of conflict around this issue, and the situation is really very unstable. There's an economic crisis in Egypt already. Um, the fact that Israel has had to cut off gas exploration, which was a significant economic contributing factor to Egypt, is definitely very bad. This means that there's going to be more pressure on President Sisi by various elements which have already been rebel rousing to begin with and trying to exploit this economic crisis. We are seeing the return return of Islamists all over the region. All of that is quite clear. Russia's elections, I don't expect much to change as a result. It's not really going to be a very democratic election, but there is going to be likely some sort of a crackdown before the elections to avoid controversy and just as an opportunity to consolidate power. So we can expect to see some of that. And of course, in the US, it's a complete disaster. Trump is still very much a leading nominee among Republicans. What happens if he does not prevail on his legal charges? There's no way of telling whether Republicans will nominate somebody else, and if that's so, who would that be? Would they go according to the current polls? How would all of that turn out during primaries? We have yet to understand. Biden, on the one hand, his support is rising as a result of his actions on the Hamas front, but he is also has a lot of challenges to overcome, such as the economy, inflation, the rising fuel prices, and his age remains a factor that is no less concerning now than it was before the war. We're still seeing the southern border crisis continue. There's a rising concern about potential terrorist attacks in the US after recent threats, and there's a great deal of political instability at home. So, all of that is a very convenient political context for the terrorists and for Hamas, and certainly for the backers that, such as Iran, who benefit from this exploitation of political instability and the stacking of crises. The more crises you have, the less anyone can really manage them. Everyone gets distracted by a proliferation of crises. So the more crises you have, the more crises you can create.
Right, right. Amidst all these things,